Hello everyone, I'm your hostess with the mostest, 8-Second Gaming, and in today's video we are going to be talking about the Season 21 Split 2 Weapons tier list. This one took a little bit longer to get out and I do apologize for that, but right now I've been playing every single day for hours trying to figure out where all the weapons are slotting in, because right now everything does feel viable and it's more along the lines of what can't be in A tier more than what is in A tier. But I think I have a fairly good understanding of it, so let's break these all down. But just quickly, if you guys are looking to take your Apex skill to the next level, then you have to check out the GameLeap website right now. Over there we have top-level coaches creating the best, most highly informative guides to make you the best player you can possibly be. Seriously, we have hundreds of guides on the site already, ranging from legend guides to gun guides to VOD reviews and much more. So click the link in the description, pick yourself up a membership, and start to improve today. But okay, with that covered, let's hop back into things. And with this tier list, I also want to make this clear that the care package weapons are not going to be on this list. Care package weapons are overpowered, they're strong, they're going to be in S+, they're super powerful. So there's no reason to put them on this weapons tier list, so just want to make sure that that's clear. And also for these first couple of tiers, I am going to be speedrunning it a little bit because there's a lot of weapons to talk about and I don't want to waste anybody's time. But let's kick things off with the E tier, and there's only one weapon here, the P2020. And to be honest, does this really surprise anybody? It's the P2020. It's awful. It's only really there to be a light mag holder or to get off drop and use until you find literally anything else. When it has hammer points, it can do some work, but without hammer points, it's awful, and it's the P20, so E tier. Next up, we have the D tier, and there are two weapons here, the Rampage and the RE45. The Rampage right now just does not feel good. It's an LMG, so you're gonna be slow while using it. It doesn't have a fast fire rate unless it has a thermite, and thermites are not the best grenade, so you're really wasting a slot by carrying one. And if you don't have a thermite and you get to a straight up gunfight with somebody, you're probably losing it because it doesn't have the fastest time to kill. It's not a good weapon, but it has some form of damage output, so that's why it's D tier and not E tier. And next up we have the RE45, which is basically just like the P2020. It's something that you use off drop until you find something else, but because it's fully automatic and you can spray somebody down, it also has the pistol strafe speed, it's somewhat decent. And when you do find hammer points, it can do some damage, so that's why it's D tier and not anything lower. But seriously, this is just another light mag holder until you find something else, so that's why it's D tier. Next up, we have the C tier, and there are three weapons find themselves here, the L-Star, the Spitfire, and the 30-30 repeater. Again, with the L-Star and the Spitfire, they're LMGs, they're not really meta right now. They can put in some work. The L-Star has a surprisingly fast time to kill, but it falls off in range, and the Spitfire does have some annoying capabilities with how much suppressive fire you can actually spray at somebody, but it doesn't have the fastest time to kill, so like the Rampage, if you get into a straight up gunfight with somebody, you're probably going to lose it if you're on equal terms. But they are decent guns and they do have some pretty unique spots where they are unbelievably good, so that's why I'm putting them in C tier and not anything lower. And the 30-30 repeater right now is not the best marksman rifle, and honestly, the meta is kind of going back towards marksman rifles being a little bit more meta, but with how many nerfs the 30-30 repeater has received because it used to be super meta, it is not worth picking up right now. However, if you do get a nice charged up headshot and you're actually able to use this in some situations, it can be good. So because it does still have usefulness, that's why I'm putting it in the C tier. Moving forward though, we have the B tier, and there are 6 weapons find themselves here. We have the triple take, the alternator, the R99, the charge rifle, the longbow, and the wingman. Now starting things off, we have the triple take, and like I just mentioned, we are somewhat going back towards a marksman rifle meta where those are more viable, and the triple take is starting to feel like it used to when it was a little bit more meta. However, if you're not able to actually charge up the triple take and hit a fully choked shot, it doesn't have the best damage output. When you're just constantly spamming this weapon, it does allow you to hit more shots because the spread is a little bit more forgiving, but you're not going to be doing a ton of damage, so it really relies on you finding yourself in situations where you can get those fully charged up shots, and those aren't all the time, so that's why I'm putting it in B tier and not anything higher. Moving forward, we have the alternator, and this gun is good, don't get me wrong. It's very stable, it's very accurate, it's very friendly for new or beginning players, but the damage output is where it starts to fall off. It's an SMG, so you're typically supposed to use it in close range, but you're losing to pretty much every other SMG that's in the game, and you're also losing to basically every assault rifle also. And when you start to use this towards the more mid-range, you're probably losing to a marksman rifle, you're probably losing to an assault rifle, and dare I say, you're probably losing to a more stable stable SMG like the Volt. However, with the alternator being so accurate, it does allow you to put yourself in a multitude of different situations, and if you happen to find disruptor rounds, then you start to put out a little bit more damage and it starts to pick itself back up, and that's why I'm putting it in B tier. Though I will warn you guys, don't pick up the alternator just to have an alternator. Find disruptor rounds and then pick up an alternator, but running the alternator by itself isn't the best idea. I do recommend picking up something else. But another light weapon that you could pick up is the next one, which is the R99. Now the R99 is constantly going through these phases where it's good, then it's bad, then it's good, then it's bad. But right now it just kind of seems middle of the pack-ish. Its one clip potential is basically out the window. It doesn't have the damage output for it, but it does have an insanely fast fire rate, allowing you to get very good bursts of damage out. So because it doesn't have the one clip potential, but it still does have its damage output potential in short bursts, I do think it's more of a B tier weapon and not anything lower. The R99 is one of the ones that I think Respawn has a ton of issues balancing, and right now, because it is in B tier, I do think it is technically balanced, so I'm a little bit happy about that. But at the same time, I do really like the R99, so I'm a little bit upset to see it not being a super powerful weapon anymore. But now we can move to our next two weapons, and that is the charge rifle and the longbow. Now right now, snipers aren't in the best of positions because you don't really want to be at super long ranges because of the meta that's going on with the legends. If you're using something like a charge rifle, yeah, it does more damage the further away somebody is when you hit them, but if you get a knock at hundreds of meters away, it's more than likely that the team that's away from you is going to be able to get the reset. Newcastle is starting to be a lot more frequent, so he's going to be able to put up his shield in front of that and make so you're not able to get the thirst. Bangalore is still everywhere, so they can smoke. The person that's down can move a little bit and they can start to get the res, and you don't even have the option of putting the 4 to 10 to see through the Bangalore smoke anymore because that's gone. So the charge rifle does have some pretty cool aspects to it because you can do some serious damage with it, but it's not really worth picking up over one of the marksman rifles or even the sentinel. And that's the same thing with the longbow. It does have some pretty good spam ability with it, but if you want to spam shots at somebody, you're better off just picking up a marksman rifle like the triple take or the G7 Scout. And yeah, 55 damage per shot is nice and the 110 headshots are pretty crispy, but again, I'd rather just use a triple take where a fully charged shot is doing basically the same amount of damage, so it's kind of a catch-22, what would you rather use, and that's why I think it's a B tier weapon. Now another weapon that is surprisingly finding itself in the B tier is the Wingman, because the Wingman has been a staple gun in Apex for such a long time. It's always been basically an S tier weapon. It was to the point that Respawn had to put it in the care package because they couldn't properly balance it and they needed to figure something out, which I do think they have going on right now. The Wingman doesn't have Skull Piercer, it doesn't have the mag, it does have Boosted Loader, but Boosted Loader really isn't that strong with the Wingman. And right now, with the meta being basically anything that's fully automatic, the Wingman is going to be losing in up-close battles right now, and at poking, you're probably losing to a marksman rifle. Though it is a very high-risk, high-reward weapon. If you're able to actually use it well and hit some headshots, body shots, stuff like that, you are going to be doing a lot of damage, and it will still be able to do what the Wingman does. But it just doesn't feel like the Wingman right now. I don't see anybody running this right now because it's not really worth picking up, so that's why I think it's a very solid B tier weapon. But that is the B tier covered, so let's move on into the A tier, and there are 7 weapons finding themselves here. We have the Car, the Volt, the Prowler, the Mastiff, the Peacekeeper, the Mozambique, and the Sentinel. Now starting things off, we have the other 3 SMGs. The Car, the Volt, and the Prowler all do their jobs extremely well. Right now in the meta, the Car is what the R99 used to be. It has the fast fire rate, it has the good damage output, it has the 1 clip potential, and it's very versatile because it doesn't matter if you're finding light ammo or heavy ammo, a light mag or heavy mag, you can slam it into the Car and be good. And it works around your teammates because say your teammate has a massive amount of heavy ammo that they don't need and you've run out of light ammo, you can just pick up some of their ammo. The Car has insane damage output too. You can actually one clip somebody with it. It's the spray SMG now, so that's why I have it in the A tier. The Volt is the SMG that you run when you're not really sure what kind of distance you're going to be getting into, but you still want to have some up close damage. This is something that people like myself are pairing with something like a marksman rifle, so you can run Volt G7 and be perfectly fine at basically every single range. And even though it is a little bit slower on its fire rate, it still has a very solid solid time to kill, so you can be at most distances and still be able to one clip with the Volt as well. Though because it does have a slower fire rate, it still does lose some up close personal fights, and that's why it's only A tier and not S tier in my opinion. And the Prowler is the Prowler. It's the same thing it has been for season after season. It has high damage potential because of the burst. It's 5 rounds, you're hitting somebody extremely hard, you can play around corners, you can play around doors, you can do a lot of stuff with it. And if you slap a purple laser sight on it, it's going to be very accurate from hip fire as well, so you can do a lot of things with the Prowler. It's just a very solid SMG. It has been for a while. There's not a whole lot that I can say about this. Moving forward, we have the 3 shotguns, the Mastiff, the PK, and the Mozambique. Now I'm going to talk about the Mozambique first here because a lot of people might think that this is controversial, but the Mozambique is actually a lot better than people give it credit for. Without hammer points, you're still hitting for 45 damage a shot, which is basically akin to a wingman shot. You don't have the same range potential that a wingman does, but it still does have some fairly consistent damage output. And once you slap hammer points on this, you can be downing people incredibly fast without them even realizing it. I think a lot of people sleep on the Mozambique, especially with hammer points, but you guys gotta stop. This thing has some pretty solid potential damage output, and it's very consistent. Once you actually start to understand that it's a triangle shot and you can hit 1 in the head, 2 in the shoulders, you're gonna be surprised how much damage this thing can actually do. When it comes to the Mastiff and the PK, they're just big bonk sticks that you can hit somebody for a massive amount of damage with. The PK hits a little bit harder, especially with disruptor rounds, but it's less consistent. The Mastiff doesn't hit as hard, but it's more consistent than the PK. They're pretty interchangeable depending on which one you want to pick up or which one you're more comfortable with, but right now they're both solid options, and I think all of the shotguns are A tier. And last in the A tier, we have the Sentinel. Now I think everyone knows how scary a charged up Sentinel can be. When you're pushing somebody and all of a sudden you hear that charged Sentinel shot go whizzing past your head, you are less inclined to peek out at them. It is basically a mini Kraber that's just in someone's pocket, and they can do a ton of damage with it. And this is one that I was actually debating putting into the S tier, but I don't think the Sentinel is S tier material because it does require a shield cell. Shield cells aren't something that you carry a ton of. At most, you should really be carrying 8 shield cells. So this depends on what kind of backpack you have. If you don't have a big backpack, you're really struggling on shield cells and you're not gonna be able to get the full damage output from a Sentinel. And I know some people are saying, well, I sacrificed this to pick up more shield cells, or I just pick up a lot of shield cells to begin with. But to be honest, you shouldn't. And I know that that is a weird reason, but it's my reason. And that's why I think it's an A tier gun and not an S tier gun, because it does rely on a lot of other RNG factors. But now we can move on into the S tier, the top weapons. And if you've been paying attention, you know what's coming. We have 6 weapons find themselves here. Every single assault rifle, the Flatline, the Havoc, the Hemlock, the Nemesis, the R301, and we also have the G7 Scout. Now when it comes to the assault rifles, I don't know what can be said about these that you guys haven't experienced already. The assault rifles right now are the meta. It doesn't matter which one you find yourself running, every single one of them is good. It's actually to the point that most teams are running Havoc Hemlock because they're just so strong. And even if you don't have a Havoc Hemlock, you can run a Flatline and still do good in a lot of different ranges. The R301 is still a laser beam. The Nemesis, when it's fully charged up, just rips through people. Assault rifles are the meta right now, and you can run double assault rifle and still be fine. It's absolutely wild. I'm honestly expecting some pretty harsh changes to assault rifles coming into season 22, but seeing as though we didn't actually get really any changes to the assault rifles going into the second split, all we really saw was the Havoc getting 4 bullets removed, which was a very minimal nerf. I'm not really sure what Respawn's going to have planned for the assault rifles coming into season 22 because honestly, they kind of let me down with the last patch notes. But with that being said, the last weapon find themselves in the S tier is the G7 Scout. This thing did get some love going into Split 2, and now it is an absolute menace. Before, it was kind of lackluster, didn't really have anything going for it, but now it has a faster fire rate, it's easier to handle, it's dealing a ton of damage. It's something like 33 damage a shot, which is wild. And when you're spamming these things out and you're hitting one after another, you can crack somebody or down them incredibly fast. And also, the G7 has a nutty hip fire. This thing does so well in up close because it's basically just hit scan when you do have it in hip fire. I don't know if it's just me or if you guys are experiencing this as well, but the hip fire in the G7 is incredible. So even if you find yourself in an up close battle and you have to panic swap to your second weapon, which is a scout, you're still pretty fine. But let me know what you guys think about this tier list in the comments down below. Would you change any weapons? Would you move them up? Would you move them down? Let me know. And if you guys want to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Apex Legends tips, tricks, and news, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Once again, I'm 8 Second Gaming. I'll see you guys in the next one.